If you are unable to complete the task, you will be punished with electric shocks. This woman, she got so scared upon hearing the electric batons buzzing sound. This is Northern Myanmar, and it is turning into a hell for some young Chinese individuals. Northern Myanmar shares a border with China's Yunnan province. Once a place of scenic beauty and abundant resources, it has turned into a region plagued by rampant crime, legal chaos, and security crises in recent years, particularly for Chinese young people. Northern Myanmar has become a nightmare filled with fear and danger. Many young Chinese are lured into engaging in telecommunications fraud in this area, while activities such as human trafficking and organ trading run rampant. Why has Northern Myanmar become such a nightmare for Chinese people? Let's see how they get there.
大哥，你快来缅甸吧，缅甸超级好，人超级多，工作也超级多呀，月薪都10万，你快来吧。哎，秀，你咋哭了？没事儿啊，太高了，我感动的呀，你快来吧。好，我收拾行李，我马上就来啊。来了。喂，我到了，具体在缅甸哪个位置啊？我来找你哈。就在那个深山老林里面那个公司，啥玩意公司啊？深山老林里面，哎，你快过来吧！哎，你妈的，终于到了，他妈深山老林鬼都不想来。哎，欢迎光临，你是来应聘的吗？对。滚地去！妈呀，又来一票人！你干嘛呀？我来应聘工作，这里啊全部装修一下，以后我就老板。老什么本啊？都是这个腰子卡了。高位，我操给你跑！必须的。快点大人，该买腰子卡了。我操，刀呢？
In Chinese social media, the term
缅北
has become a trending topic. It originally refers to the northern region of Myanmar, but in the context of telecommunications fraud, it has evolved to specifically represent certain areas adjacent to China, such as Kokang, Wustate, and Mongla. These areas are relatively detached from the central government of Myanmar. This region is like an enclave sandwiched between China and Myanmar, and is predominantly under the control of local ethnic armed groups. The border between China and Myanmar is lined with numerous pathways and routes, which undoubtedly provide great convenience for individuals engaging in telecommunications fraud to access the region. Some young people in China, after seeing online information promising daily wages of 3,000 or monthly salaries of 50,000, take reckless actions, unaware that they are stepping into a series of nightmares. Upon arriving in this area, those who attempt to strike it rich have their identification documents, phones, and cash confiscated. They are then subjected to a life of confinement and strict control, becoming what is known as telephone operators. Their fraudulent activities are primarily targeted at mainland Chinese citizens. The bottom stab was to the intestines. The top stab was through the stomach. I was playing game and meet a netizen. He called me to go to Yunnan province to do game customer service, said 15,000 a month. And so I went to Yunnan. I realized that he was tricking me to Myanmar to do fraud. He arranged people to smuggle me to the north of Myanmar. As soon as I went over to enter the fraud company, so that I wetched chatting and then do the scam. I do not want to do it because it's illegal. The company asked me to compensate the 60,000 yuan or not to let me go, and asked me to compensate the training fees, floor wear and tear, air wear and tear. I didn't pay the money and tried to run away on my own. When I was caught by the security guard, the team leader stabbed me twice. Threw me out of the company. I called myself a cab to the hospital, hospitalized for 20 days, spent 150,000 yuan.
杀猪其实很简单，总共分5步。第一，锁定目标，分析目标，根据目标需求设定人设。
Their methods of deception are not only diverse, but also becoming increasingly specialized. The most common scams include impersonating relatives for loans, posing as government officials to extract deposits, romance scams, financial scams, gambling scams, and more. Each scam has its corresponding script. Scammers study these scripts and then engage in conversations with potential victims following the script. The operation resembles an assembly line, with different individuals controlling various stages of the scam. Furthermore, specialized scam software provides technical support for these operations. If a scam operator fails to complete a designated task or tries to escape the control of the scam group, they may face physical violence ranging from beatings to serious injury or even death. It's common for operators to move between different casinos and telecommunications scam companies. They are commodified and treated as goods for trade. Often, only by paying substantial bail amounts can they gain a chance to escape the control of the scam group. Some might wonder, why are these scam centers primarily based in northern Myanmar?
元宝哥，我还有头猪没宰呢。
The concentration and persistence of telecom scams in northern Myanmar are linked to the tacit approval and support from local forces. Illegal industries like gambling and telecom scams have gained legitimacy in many parts of northern Myanmar. Local forces are content with their growth and have formed cohesive relationships with these industries. This collusion is one of the key reasons why northern Myanmar has become a paradise for scams. On one hand, local forces in northern Myanmar provide protection and shelter to telecom scam groups through their influence and power. On the other hand, telecom scam groups pay various taxes and fees to local forces, creating a community of interests between them. Since Myanmar's independence, the northern region of Myanmar has maintained a complex relationship with the central government. Ethnic reconciliation has not made substantial progress, and conflicts between the government army and local ethnic armed groups in northern Myanmar persist. In order to sustain their armed forces and achieve a certain degree of autonomy, local forces in northern Myanmar need to achieve self-sufficiency economically. For a long time, these local forces have relied on industries such as drug cultivation, mineral extraction, and logging as the pillars of their economic self-sufficiency. However, with the implementation of alternative cultivation programs and the depletion of natural resources, various local armed groups in northern Myanmar have experienced a decline in economic income. The rise of telecom scams has conveniently filled the economic gap for the local forces in northern Myanmar. It has provided them with the means to support their armed forces and maintain a standoff with the central government. It is reported that a telecom scam group operating in Wa State pays local taxes of millions of dollars each day. This represents a significant financial revenue for the local forces in Wa State. In March and May of this year, Chinese ambassador to Myanmar, Chen Hai, met twice with Myanmar's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Home Affairs, Lieutenant General So Tut, in Naypyidaw. The two sides engaged in discussions about intensifying efforts to combat illegal cross-border activities in northern Myanmar, including telecom scams and gambling. Chen Hai emphasized that in dealing with telecom scams in northern Myanmar, we must coordinate our actions more forcefully, strike with a heavy hand, and address both the symptoms and root causes. Lieutenant General So Tut also expressed that they will further deter the forces and individuals in northern Myanmar to safeguard the security and interests of both countries' people. According to incomplete statistics, there are currently over 100,000 individuals engaged in telecom fraud in the region. These telecom fraud groups, which have grown unchecked in the northern Myanmar region, primarily target individuals within China. Northern Myanmar primarily refers to 4 autonomous regions along the China-Myanmar border, each controlled by separate military forces that are independent of the central government. These regions exist in a state of warlordism. They have been significantly influenced by Chinese culture and have striking similarities in lifestyle and language with Yan'an province. Mandarin Chinese is spoken, transactions in Chinese yuan are common, and signals from China's major telecom providers, China Mobile, China Unicom, and China Telecom, are accessible. To cater to economic development needs, local military governments have even established dedicated economic development zones. They provide specialized business licenses to criminals involved in telecom fraud, supporting the growth of such criminal activities. It's precisely due to these reasons that northern Myanmar has become a haven for fraudsters. Skyscrapers rise from the ground and roads are swiftly constructed. However, these newly built office buildings are mostly rented out to groups involved in telecom fraud. Some of the Chinese involved in these illegal activities may be poor, jobless or lacking in education, and in the absence of legal channels to obtain income, they may be compelled by these unlawful elements to travel to Myanmar to engage in illegal activities. In addition, there are others who travel to Myanmar for greed and unlawful purposes. These are the cyber slaves of our time, forced to engage in those scams. During visits, one would often hear the sounds of fireworks and firecrackers in the night. They would echo in different places. Sometimes, these firecrackers would wake you up even at 2 or 3 in the morning. At first, it seems odd. Why are firecrackers set off every night? Later, you realize that these firecrackers are set off by telecom fraud groups. This practice seems to have become a custom. For every successful fraud of 500,000 yuan, approximately $77,000, they set off a bunch of firecrackers to celebrate. The fireworks lighting up the sky seem like an epilogue to this surreal reality. Victims back in China are left penniless by the scams, while here, these achievements are celebrated with firecrackers and festivity.